I'm here to talk about Solenic Medical and our goal to keep you moving. We have a great team. Just start the introduction there. We got about 50 years entrepreneur experience. We have a numerous medical device and orthopedic experience, as well as regulatory. Also have a great board. Won't go into that specifically, but the best thing about this, the company has been together for 4 years, and 5 of the 6 people here you see here have been together that entire time. So a lot of stability from the early team. What I'm going to talk about is infections on implants, specifically prosthetic joint implants. And the importance here is people got these prosthetic joint implants to retain their mobility. The biggest risk to losing their mobility at that point is a prosthetic joint infection. Biofilm on that metal surface hinders treatment, and the catch is you can't just scratch it off. Everyone here is familiar with biofilm. You brush it off your teeth 1 or more times a day. It's easy enough to open your mouth and brush your teeth. You can't do that to a knee. It's a surgical intervention. And the standard of care is to do a surgical intervention and essentially do a teeth brushing type procedure. So once a patient has been indicated with a prosthetic joint infection, it's about $500,000 lifetime cost of care. It usually cascades to amputation within 5 years, and there's a very high risk of mortality. In fact, the 5-year mortality is similar to breast cancer. Breast cancer has about 89% mortality rate with that level of indication, and ours is prosthetic joint infections, 87%. So it's extremely high within 5 years of that indication. There are millions of knees and hips. There'll be 1.3 million knees in the U.S. alone this year, many multiples outside of the U.S. There'll be 650 or so thousand hips, and that excludes tibial nails and a variety of others. I mentioned the standard of care is surgical intervention. Starts with antibiotics, and it might be 6 to 12 weeks of antibiotics. Usually does not do much because it can't really penetrate the biofilm. Again, you know, the body can't really do the same thing you can when you open your mouth and brush your teeth. So the DARE is a debridement, antibiotics, and implant retention procedure. Then it escalates to implant removal and replacement. And that might be a 6 to 12 months bed-bound kind of situation for that patient, who at a stage in that patient's life, 6 to 12 months off their feet is going to shorten their life immediately. And these are high morbidity patients. They may be diabetic, they may be obese, they may be cancer patients. All those things have compromised their immune system, which is why their body is not fighting it very well. The solution is our alternating magnetic field device. Alternating magnetic fields generate eddy currents on the surface of the implant. These eddy currents generate thermal medicine. If this sounds vaguely familiar, an alternating magnetic field device is very familiar as an MRI. They tell you to take off your jewelry and ask if you have metal in your body. The catch is not trying to generate heat on implants. It's to generate a very smooth and even distribution of heat on implants to make it a very controlled thermal dose. And that's what our IP is, and that's where all our magic is. One thing we discovered very early on is that AMF is synergistic with antibiotics as a standard of care. It's broadly synergistic in vitro, and in vivo demonstrations in sheep. It's across pathogens, gram-positive, gram-negative, and across multiple bacteria, from MRSA to other lower, lower indications of bacteria that's been identified on implants, and across multiple antibiotics. So the synergistic effect is great. It allows us to provide a lower thermal dose, but high level of efficacy that's beneficial to the patient. And our magic is shaping the field. Like I said, it's not hard to generate implants, thermal medicine on implants accidentally with MRI. What is hard is generating an even thermal dose. And you see here, our thermal dose has been described by the shape of the implant. If we know the shape of the implant, the material, and titanium and cobalt chrome are the most common ones, and we know the target thermal dose, then we can hit it pretty accurately. And the most convoluted infection, or the most convoluted implant in the body, is a knee implant. We didn't intentionally start with the most convoluted geometry, but there's actually synergy. It forced it to solve a lot of geometric problems that add a lot of synergy. And the ability to get a very, very tightly targeted thermal dose is the result of all that work. In addition to getting a very even heat distribution across a wide variety of implants, we also can dial it down. So we initially started with a high level of efficacy and a high level of safety kind of filters through the FDA. One image shown there is that's a implant on a sheep tibia up there. The reintegration, even after a very, very high degree of dose above what we would target therapeutically, a high level of thermal dose had incredibly good bone ingrowth, healthy bone cells reintegrating with the implant, even if they were damaged by the infection itself. So the bone ingrowth was really wonderful. In fact, the bone grew back thicker than the control animals. But we also have the ability to dial that down. Eventually, we would want to get to prophylactic care and be used after every procedure. The clinical and reimbursement model, the initial indication we're going after is that surgical intervention, that surgical toothbrushing. Open it up, do a washout or a DARE procedure or a revision. There are flexible treatment options. I showed you the thermal dose on the previous page, but the ability to use this inpatient, outpatient, and to shape the transducer for knees, hips, or trauma is there. Now, one of the things we're going through right now is the device revenue model. For an indicated infection, the hospital typically gets $30,000 to treat infections every 90 days. So what we are targeting is the ability to have either a delaying effect or a target for a control patient with a hyper-compromised immune system, or for an acute infection to be able to treat it at a high dose every 90 days. So that 90-day window is huge for retaining the implant as well as the cost effectiveness of fighting the implant infections. The device is what you see right here. This device we actually introduced on the show floor at ACUS, the American Association of Hip and Knee Surgeons, in November. We had a really great booth presence at AOS back in February, and a lot of great discussions with physicians. The FDA has accepted a breakthrough device designation. We've met with them about 6 times. There's been a lot of education with them about our simulations and our thermal dose and what that means. And the educational process to get them dialed into what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it has been very effective. Our sixth meeting with them is next Wednesday. Hopefully we'll fine-tune the clinical path and get ready for first-in-human studies in May. So we're right on the cusp with a very well-defined device. Now we got to get the first-in-human approval. The timeline that I've kind of described here is there. We have already started on, we've been working on knees for a while. We've already started on hips. We've actually got a good progress on tibial nails as well, which are either the highest volume and the highest infection problems as well. Our lead investors are Johnson & Johnson, Shangbei, High Point, and Pier 70 is our latest investor in a bridge round. All total, we've raised about $10.2 million with management and angels involved as well. We are that bridge that we closed literally a week ago Friday, will lead to a Series B that will fund the pivotal human trials, and getting ready for market launch. As I mentioned, Solenic Medical is here to keep you moving for implant infections that are taking patients off their feet. Thank you very much.